Hello, good evening, everybody, and good afternoon, and good morning for people joining from other parts of the world. Hi Karthik, hi Sam, thanks for joining in. I hope everybody is doing good. It's raining here in Bombay, and seems like the perfect time to have a conversation on a rainy Bombay evening with some chai with me. So, today actually I'm going to be speaking about caste and what caste means in a modern Indian context. So, I have a very uncomfortable relationship with caste, or uncomfortable or an ignorant relationship with the concept of caste. And for people who don't know or who are unaware, a caste system is basically stratification of society where people are divided into different categories. And in India, caste is largely influenced by a Hindu text called Manusmriti. And in the Manusmriti, the castes were actually divided by professions, different categories of professions, and certain professions were more inhumane, if I may say so, than the others. And I must mention that discrimination based on caste is a criminal act in India, or crimes against certain castes are considered criminal acts in India because of the work and the acts or the movements of liberation by the people of the community. So my relationship with caste, as I said, has been ignorant because I have been born into a family that was historically considered more privileged compared to other castes that are there in the Indian society. And my knowledge of it has been very superficial, or my knowledge of it has not come by speaking to people of different communities. Right, so that's the reason why I wanted to actually talk to a person from the community and get an understanding, because even as interculturalists, when we describe caste, it is just so technical and mechanical that, hey, yes, caste used to exist, now it doesn't exist anymore. But we do know, even though it's caste has been abolished, the social conditioning hasn't, and there are people from the community who still face a lot of challenges. So that's the reason why I wanted to talk to a person from the community. And today I'm joined by Bao. Bao is an illustrator, designer, and artist who is currently at one of the most prestigious institutes in the world for design, if I may say so, called Bauhaus in Germany. And her work focuses on challenging casteism and patriarchy. So through her work, you can see her work through her Instagram profile. It's called The Big Fat Bao, and I was mesmerized by it, and I learned so much just by looking at the art and the designs that she's created, and I'm sure you will too. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Bao for our lovely conversation today. Gonna add her. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and Ba's going to join us soon.
Hi.
Hey!
Oh,
Yes!
sorry.
Hi, Bo! How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. As you know, we had a short conversation before. I'm amazing. Thank you. Thank you for asking, and thank you for being here today and taking the time out from your busy schedule, is what I'm assuming, and having this conversation with me, which I feel is very important to have. And the hopefully with this, people walk away with not only knowing more about caste, but also how they can be allies. And if I have missed something out in your introduction, please feel free to add. And from there we can, take it away.
No, I don't think you missed anything.
No, I didn't.
But just because I'm in Dessau and the internet is really bad, I
Okay,
might be getting disconnected in between.
problem at all.
I
You
just
can-
apologize in advance for that.
That's not a problem at all. That's not a problem at all. And if that happens, you can join back again and we'll take it from there. Yes?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So to dive right into it, with the difficult question, not for you, but for me and for our viewers. For our non-Baujan viewers, can you, or listeners rather, can you explain to us or can you shed light on the Bahujan community and who identify as Bahujan so that there's some context that is set before I get into the more nuanced questions as well?
So, the word Bahujan actually comes from Buddhist literature,
Okay,
and uh, it it literally means, majority or the masses.
right.
And as far as I've read, this was something that was sort of used, and by Kanchiram, it became something that like unifying sort of factor because
Mm-hmm,
of Kanchiram's work.
mm-hmm,
It to give like an analogy, like a very basic understanding. If you have to compare the term BIPOC, right?
okay.
Um, so Bahujan is something like that, but the term BIPOC is a little misleading
Mm-hmm,
because when you say people of color, right?
mm-hmm.
It doesn't go down. It doesn't boil down to the question of caste, because everyone has like brown skin.
In India
So,
specifically, because we are
it
talking in
could
an
be in
Indian
Nepal,
context,
it can be in Pakistan, it can be in Sri Lanka.
South
South
Asia.
Asia has like the caste system because obviously it comes from here.
Mm-hmm,
Uh, Even like countries like Japan also have like their own caste system, but it's not
mm-hmm.
spoken of. And so like BIPOC sort of is a little misleading. But Bahujan is like the masses, like everyone is included in that. So you have the Adivasi community, you have the tribal community, you have Dalits, you have people from Shudra caste. So all of us who've been uh, oppressed, all of us who've like historically been oppressed,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and like who've been the sort of at the receiving end of casteism,
Mm-hmm.
who've been like you can use all of these words, right? Marginalized, oppressed, like we've been
Yeah.
excluded from society, so to speak. So uh, that's who we are, and we
Yeah.
make the majority, like numerically we are the majority in the country.
That was very surprising for me also, and embarrassingly so. By majority, do you have a number with respect to what you mean by majority?
uh, I'm not sure. So the the upper caste, I think the Brahmins sort of make like the 15 odd percent,
Mm-hmm.
but the rest is us.
Yes.
This is also the reason why we need caste-based census,
Mm-hmm.
which has not, happened.
Okay.
And uh, this will give us more like clarity,
Hmm.
uh, will give the right numbers, will help in understanding the movement itself better.
Also, right now we don't have caste-based census. My
No.
understanding was that has been caste-based census, and that's how we know. For example, there are 15% Brahmins that are there in this country. So clearly, we do need that kind of a system to understand, and so that people understand at large that there is a huge population in India which has
Rahi has the
historical.
answer. Bahujan is roughly 80%. Yeah, so
Bahujans are roughly 80% in this
80%.
country, and
Yeah,
Bahujans have then historically also been oppressed, for the lack of a
yeah,
better word, for a very long time, right?
yeah.
And I think in common language and in common conversation, it usually comes up, and even in youth circles, right, that caste doesn't exist anymore, or people, it's only basically a quota system now. Times have changed. It is a historic concept, and the oppression is also historic. Even though, if you're looking at the right right channels and right sources and right mediums, there is news that you will see that there's still discrimination that happens. But the large mass idea is that caste doesn't exist anymore, right? So, or the discrimination against caste don't exist anymore. So, if you can give us an idea or shed some light upon what kind of discrimination do Bahujans still face in what we call modern India?
So one thing is certain, like casteism exists in every sphere in our society. It could be education, it could be the unorganized sector, it could be uh, the government, it could be anything, everything, everywhere you will find casteism like functioning and thriving. If you take, for example, if you take universities, there are so many incidents, at least in engineering colleges. I can say for a fact that the hostel rooms will not be allotted to Dalit boys. Uh, Teachers will like unnecessarily cut your marks for during Viva. Okay, they'll be well prepared. They will have all the right answers, but they'll not be having like that specific surname, or they will not be having like they will not look like a certain way, and the professors sort of know this because of the surname, right? So even if they get like very good marks in theory, the viva will be like single digit marks. And this is on purpose, and there's no way to find out what went wrong, why it went wrong. There's when you get the marks, uh, there's no way of asking like, why did I get less marks in this? I answered everything correctly, but then I get like single digit marks. So casteism works there. In midday meals, like recently Dr. Silya like shared like a bunch of stories on and tweets about the Karnataka government finally introducing eggs in midday meal, but it's I think for a day or two or something. But the problem here is that the health system itself is dominated by Savarnas, and this whole idea that you have to be vegetarian and you have to be like whatever religious context they have, and so you cannot eat meat. You cannot eat animal based protein. It's not good for you. So somebody else, higher up in the social pyramid gets to decide what children will eat. There is no relation between the community and the kind of food that is provided. Like as it is very difficult to get education in our country. On top of that, like when governments make these schemes, right, for midday meal in schools, the parent usually will be like, okay, we have to struggle slightly lesser because our child will go to school, will not be at home, and because they will get food to eat in the school, so we don't have to cook, and so at least the child will get one nutritious meal in a day. But it was very surprising that many people messaged me, and what they said, that, and these were all Savarna people, and they said that my parent used to work in this Marathi medium school in Nashik, in Mumbai, and my mother would bring back home like dabbas of the food that was given in school. And now, like, I realize that, how that's wrong and how casteist that is. So already there is no access to to like living a dignified life. Then when something is given, that also is snatched away. This is in like schools. Then like casteism, just it's there everywhere.
That is true. And for people who don't know, Savarna are people who are not Bahujans, who are largely from the privileged caste, if I may say so. And I have had that experience as well. So I often do corporate trainings, and I train people who are executives, who are management level, or who are either entry levels. And I remember speaking to this one individual who was talking about promotion, and we were discussing promotions. And he said that my manager is from an upper caste and he won't promote me because I am not upper caste. He was Dalit. So that is a huge issue as well, wherein this is a corporate and IT firm that is considered, something that enhances the future, or it will propagate a modern future for India. And within such organizations, there are conversations that happen wherein upward mobility is restricted based on such an archaic concept of caste, for sure. And yes, like it's in daily life, and the examples that you shared are something that is daily life. That's something that we live every day as people who don't face it, and then you hear stories of people who face it, and it almost feels unreal, right? And talking about things not being real, the other question that people usually have, or the other assumption rather that people have, is that casteism exists only in rural areas where there may be not as much penetration of education compared to the urban areas, or not as much privilege as urban areas, and that casteism doesn't exist in urban areas at all, or metro cities, for example. Do you think there is any truth to that statement? No?
No,
It comes from a
not
very
at all.
ignorant place. Yeah.
Yes, cities are built on stolen land by Bahujans. There was a study, I think, done in 2018, and then there was another study that was done, I think, before that. Professor Dilip Mandal had actually written an article, I think, about it. So, Bangalore, in Bangalore, 20% of the colonies and societies, they don't have any Dalit families. Kolkata doesn't have, like, at least 50 to 60% of Kolkata, like, there's no housing available for Dalit families. If it's a very simple question that I will ask you, I will ask everyone here, that if casteism did not exist in cities, slum rehabilitation authority would not exist, and Dharavi would not exist. If casteism, like people say that there's no casteism in cities, then everyone would get safe, secure housing in Mumbai. There would be no, ghettoized localities. People from Kurla would not be forced to move out to the outskirts of Mumbai and settle in Mumra. Uh, this largely happened in 2002 after the riots. Most of my friends, like Muslim friends from my school, their families like overnight left Mumbai and they had to move to Mumbai. So in any city, if you look at it, uh, the aim of architecture, if it was uh, you know safe housing for everyone, uh, we would have lesser ugly buildings and happier cities, I think. The landscape of Mumbai would not be Ambani's building versus the Worli Koivada in front of it, or like any Koivada for like Mahim or Bandra, like any of these Kolivadas would be better, would not be ghettoized, would not be um, at the receiving end of the government's worst policies. And there would also be like happier communities. Cities are very casteist. Like if you are a person looking for an apartment, to rent out, the first thing they will ask you is whether you eat meat or no. And if you eat meat, obviously they will ask you what kind of meat. If you are a Muslim man, it's very difficult to get a house. Like my own friends, like they're very well educated, okay? Like they've graduated from IIMs, they're gold medalists, they worked with the government of Japan and all. Imagine,
Apparently,
like,
that doesn't matter.
he couldn't get a house in Mumbai for months. So if anyone says that there's no casteism in cities, that's absolutely wrong. Like
So
we
even
have to really look around us. Like
yes, you
it's
have to
there.
be yes, you have to be observant. You have to. It's very obvious sometimes. So if when it's obvious and you don't know, then you have chosen to ignore it.
Yeah.
Okay? And yes, of course, in casteism and food, they're so interrelated and nuanced. And it doesn't only have to be based on religion. That it's only the Muslims who don't find a safe space, for the lack of a better word.
You like if you're a Dalit, it's impossible for you to even like get housing in any of these big like housing complexes. Like I myself have been, like, there was this one time when in South Bombay I had to enter one of these very big buildings, and after passing through the security gate, I entered the building and there were 3 elevators in front of me, and I was about to like I pressed the button and I was waiting for one of the elevators to come. I was told not to use these elevators. I was told, can you please use the service elevator, which is at the back?
And this was told to you on the basis of what?
I don't look upper caste enough, or I don't
Right.
look whatever enough. So,
Hmm.
The very fact that a building has a service elevator,
Yeah.
it shows that you do not want the domestic workers, you do not want the sanitation workers, you do not want the bahujans to be seen in your elite immediate environment.
Yes, because
And that,
sanitation workers and these people, the
yeah,
people who work in such kind of industries are largely Bahujans. And
yeah,
you creating a separate lift, and this is something that people probably ignore as well. That in itself is creating a divide in daily lives, even in an urban area, let alone, rural areas. And my assumption is even that when there are government subsidized housings, even that in the allocation of that, I'm sure there's discrimination that happens there as well. And somebody in the comments actually mentioned, how could we change this? I think one way to change this, in my opinion, and please feel free to add, Bao, is not ignoring these things. I think
yeah,
information is the step one, because I think people, Savarnas don't have the information right now, or have chosen to ignore a lot of the casteism that happens even within our houses as well. There are certain
yeah,
conversations, certain language. Sometimes you don't serve certain people in certain utensils. Why is that happening? Has that ever been questioned? And if it's questioned, it's ignored. So I think firstly informing ourselves and clearly pointing it out when somebody is using a certain kind of language, or if you find certain kind of discrimination happening within your circle of influence. I think that's the first place to start, because I right now don't have the power to make policy changes, large scale policy changes.
of course.
So, what do I have within my capacity? It's talking about it or listening to a person from the community talk about it. So, yes, I think definitely having a conversation is a starting point. What do you think about that, Bao?
I think more than that, like that would be the second step. The first step
Okay.
would be to ask, those critical questions to
Hmm.
yourself, to the people around you. That
Circle. Yeah.
uh, why why do you think this is, or why does this happen in our household, or uh, why do we live in this space? How did we come about to be here?
Hmm.
Uh, what is so meritorious about something that I did? Like, uh, I can give you one example, right? Like, women have, like, they have this whole thing. They're educated. They're feminists, and all of that. Uh, they want like equal rights. They want equal pay. Uh, but they also do this very horrible thing of demanding that the domestic worker come at 5 a.m. in the morning, just so that their rest of the day is like, you know, smooth enough for them to function.
Hmm.
And then they don't give like holidays. There's no um, concept of how do I say? So when we ask for when we go for a job interview, right? The salary negotiation starts, and if you're a fresher, uh, you don't really have much of expectation. You're also searching for, like, you also need that experience, and you're desperate to get a job. You're desperate to pay back money to your, like, family, loans, whatever it may be, and you sort of accept whatever's on, offered to you. But
Mm-hmm.
slowly and gradually you know your value, you know your worth, and you put a value on yourself. It's like, this is how much I'm worth in my salary, right? Now this thought process, this happened to you because you got educated, because you have that surrounding, that privilege, that and that understanding that, okay, I've done this much work in 1 year. I expect whatever 12% raise. This is the kind of things that I've done and all. The domestic worker who comes to your house, right? She doesn't know this because she has not had access to proper education. She's not had access to any sort of like a knowledge base in terms of finance, that I can do this to myself. I have a certain worth, right? Like for doing this kind of job. So when the domestic worker comes to your house and you all negotiate her salary, it is always the upper caste family, like the woman or whoever, who will decide for them what their salary should be.
So her worth is not in her hands.
Yeah.
And that's been for the longest time. And that's also conditioned into it.
It's how it is. It's how you maintain casteism, right? So I think starting with that itself will be like a big thing, where asking the domestic worker that this is the kind of work, realizing it for yourself. And many people, funnily, they make these reels and these videos, okay, on advantages of moving to Germany. Tuck, 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 like life insurance, this, that, good money, safety, security, whatever. Okay. And last point, and that will be no reservations. That is the advantage. Then the disadvantage will be, oh, I have to clean my own toilet. I have to clean my own house. I have to, cook meals. I have to clean my vessels 10 times in a day.
Listen to yourself. Yeah, that's it.
Now, if there is no job available for whatever profession you have, you are still able to clean things. You will definitely apply at the unemployment center saying, if you have any cleaning jobs, I will do it. Because you will get paid. And you're willing to accept that 9-10 euros per hour for cleaning. 9-10 euros per hour is not a small amount. Right? That 9-10 euro, 10 euros is the average salary of a domestic worker in Mumbai for a month.
In one household. Yeah.
And she will work 7 days a week. She will do jhadu, she will do pocha, she will do dusting, and she will wash vessels. This is all in 10 euros for a month. You will get 10 euros for 1 hour of just, sweeping the place.
Right.
So I think this is where it has to start. Like, you have to start within yourself. That critical thinking has to come from yourself, and then we can proceed with talking, reading, listening, all of that.
Yes. So that conversation has to happen within yourself first. That's step one. That is so right. Wherein you question everything, literally everything, every step, every interaction. Be conscious and be present with who you're interacting with and what's the difference in your life and their life, and then question that and then proceed with externally
it's funny,
talking and learning.
I'll tell you, it's really funny, because here, for a glass beer bottle, you will get 15 cents. For a aluminum beer can, you will get 25 cents. If you drink and when you return it to the supermarket, okay, they have the recycling. So you will find a lot of people collecting all of this. Even Indians do it. They'll go to all these parties and everything, and then they will collect all these bottles, and then they go and they deposit it, and you get money. The same thing they will not do in India. For that, you will have one, Dalit sanitation worker who will come. You will not pay nothing and give give her or give him this whole packet of kachra and just forget about it.
True. And you know, this struck me when you were talking about Mumbai, and we were also talking about design, and you were talking about buildings, and you yourself are a design student. No, you're a designer actually, and you're an illustrator. And you know, as an interculturalist, when I look at design, or if I look at a piece of art, or if I look at a piece of illustration, I usually look at it from a lens of culture, and it's very generalized for me. And this is Indian, this is non-Indian. You know, this looks like a South Asian aesthetic. This doesn't look like a South Asian aesthetic. I think the farthest I've gone is defining a South Asian design as Dravidian or non-Dravidian. You know, that's also probably my scope of knowledge as well. But then from the lens through which I look at it is just basically that it stops there, right? But for you, do you look at design through a Bahujan lens, you know, through a Dalit lens, through the lens of, sorry, just getting a call. You know, through a lens that I would probably not see it from coming, you know, I'm a Savarna, so coming from a different kind of an upbringing and environment. So I also wanted to understand your thought process when, not only when you're designing, of course, but also when you're looking at design.
What is okay? So when you see something, when you see anything that's designed, what makes you think that it's Indian?
I think for me it's the colors or it's the flowers, you know, or for example, if there is an individual in the painting or the design, the way the person looks, or you know, there are certain art forms that are considered Indian, and if there are influences of that in a design that pops up to me, that looks Indian to me. But I think the first thing has to be the combination of colors and the way the design is done, the way the design is shaped, probably as well.
Okay, so you're talking about visual design, right? Like art
Yes,
and illustration.
yes.
So art was never something that was practiced by Savarnas.
Okay, that's news to me.
It's all there in the Manusmriti. It's all there in the Vedas.
One should refer.
So primarily, like arts was something that was practiced by the tribal or Adivasi communities.
Correct.
And every community, they have like a different art form, right? Like Varli is different or Madhubani is different. Artwork coming in from Tamil Nadu, like a tribal community in Tamil Nadu will be different. Artwork coming in from the Gond tribe will be different. Now, this was not something that Savarnas ever practiced because education essentially meant by hearting the Vedas and safeguarding the Vedas from other castes. And so you only know like the jibber jabber that the Brahmins do in Sanskrit, of course. Crafts in India were always caste based, right? So the Kumbhar caste was always forced into pottery. One specific caste, the Chambhar caste, is always into making things out of leather or converting hide into leather. There's one specific caste which will be forced to engage in weaving. There's one specific caste which is forced to engage in fabric dyeing. Right? So these were not things that were done by Savarnas ever.
Hmm.
It was only eventually when the British came, art schools started, and they came with their own European, art styles and methods, and for them, like, crafts again was never really an important thing, because arts is where all the intelligent people work and all of that. So art schools were started. And then you also have somebody like from marginalized castes only. They are laborers, and they used to paint. They still do. They are hired for painting trucks. They are hired for painting signages. They're hired for painting walls. And if you go to any of the, if you go to most of, like in Tamil Nadu, most of the temples will have like the red and white paint, stripes out, like signifying that this is like a temple area. So that is not done by a priest. That is done by someone from a marginalized caste. The divider on the road which has the black and white paint, right? All these things are done by laborers who are from marginalized caste. They have the skill. They have the tacit knowledge. But when we look at design, when we look at art, we don't think it this way. We don't look at it this way, because they are artists, they are designers, but they are not considered designers. They are not considered artists. And design is something which is essentially very different from art, because the main criteria for design is that the artwork or the thing that you create, right? It has to satisfy this criteria that I should be able to replicate it multiple times.
Right.
And I should be able to mass produce it.
Right.
And it can be done using various ways. So previously, what used to happen is when films used to be released or when political rallies used to happen, they used to hire somebody who is a laborer from a marginalized caste, and they will pay him like very like minimal, and they'll be like, okay, you go paint like 10 film posters. Okay. And all these posters will be like made by hand. The typography, the outline, the artwork, everything will be done by hand. When design was introduced, then you have the concept of screen printing. You have the concept of, replicating a specific artwork 1,000 times.
Correct.
Now, when that happens, these same laborers, they learned how to replicate they learned how to use this machinery. They learned how to screen print. They learned how to, bind books. They learned like everything about the printing press. They learned typography. They're very good at it, right? And typesetting and all of these things. They know it. They're very good at it, but they're not designers. However, design institutions will call these people as trainers or workshop, assistants, get Savarna students, to learn from them. And then the students graduate as designers, but the workshop assistant is still the workshop assistant.
And that's
so design has to be looked at not just with the visual. It has to be looked at from the angle of how this was made and who made it and what went into making it.
Those are the kinds of questions that you must ask yourself when you're looking at anything, especially from an Indian context, for sure, because firstly we ignore the process. Even if we go into the process, we kind of ignore the people involved in the process apart from the person who is technically or non-technically responsible for the design. So I think asking those kind of questions, of course, is also very, very important. And it was just such a ride for me listening to you talk. First of all, just saying the fact that savarnas were not supposed to be in the arts, or because that clearly, because caste was actually divided by professions, and it was not considered their profession to be into the art forms or to create in that manner, of course. But then there was a certain shift that happened, that people from the Savarna community actually got into arts. Is there a reason for that?
Because so you have caste privilege, right?
Right.
So somebody like Abhinandanathan Tagore comes from a Brahmin family, and you have this caste privilege that I have full mobility. I can do anything. I assume that I have the intellect to do anything and everything. This was also the time when the British were in India. This was also the time when the Swadeshi movement is just starting. Like you need something to counter the British.
Yeah.
You need a unified culture to oppose the British, the colonizer. So instead of putting forward a real picture, instead of acknowledging, casteism, instead of acknowledging privileges and all of that, Savarnas went ahead and put up a unified Hindu culture synonymous to Indian culture. And you have the beginning of Shantiniketan. You have the beginning of Madras Art School. You have the beginning of JJ School of Art. And all your Raja Ravi Verma and all of these big people coming in. Now they're learning techniques of painting and art from the British, right? But they're not doing it in the British style.
Yes.
But you don't have a style of your own either, because you're a Savarna and you don't really have a culture, so to speak. And so you start painting Lakshmi and Saraswati and all of this, right? Like that's Raja Ravi Verma's signature work.
Right.
And so you're creating a Hindu visual language in the name of an Indian visual language.
Yeah.
And so you get to label yourself as artist. You get to label your craft studio as a pottery studio. But like Kumbharwada and Dharavi is still Kumbharwada only. Like that has not changed even now.
But some people get to keep fancy names. That was going to be my next question to you about, the generalization of Indian culture. Akhand Bharat, sab kuch ek hai. For people who don't speak Hindi, like there's one India, and yes, one India, and everybody is the same, and everybody needs to speak the same language, and that's how we're going to be unified in the end, etc., etc. But you're in Germany right now, in one of the most prestigious, schools in the world, and there is a huge Indian diaspora in Germany as well. And in your perspective, through your gaze as well, do you think that, the concept of India, like we were speaking just right now, it's been quite generalized, and that it's like a Hindu tinge to everything that's Indian. So do you think that's the perception of India, which is, a general idea of India, which is not very inclusive? And of course, there are many communities that do get excluded from the idea that is India. And I because I was in France for some time, and I felt that also happened because there's a huge diaspora. Yes, there's a huge diaspora of Indians in Europe, but the people who get the opportunity to go to such countries usually come from, privilege. And if you come from a certain kind of privilege, there is most of the times you are a Savarna. right?
Yeah.
For people, we have been repeating Savarna a lot, but I didn't give a clarification. Savarnas are people who are non-Bahujans, right? So, do you think that, do you have the same experience as well, wherein people, when they speak of India, is a very generalized idea of India, which is not very inclusive?
I I don't know if generalized would be the right word.
Hmm.
It's very open out there. It's very Hindu culture. Like there's people will talk of uh, Diwali as a traditional Indian festival, uh, but they will not talk of Buddha Purnima as a traditional Indian festival. Uh, they will not even consider Eid. They will not even consider Christmas as Indian festivals. And like they put this picture across that whatever Hindu festivals are there, only those are uh, Indian festivals, and that there's nothing else to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you will, and this was a very funny thing that actually happened in my class.
Hmm.
So on Buddha Purnima, I wished everyone happy Buddha Purnima,
Mm-hmm.
and like whoever is a practicing Buddhist, like especially for you, blah blah blah. And then suddenly there was this one person who was like, "No, Hindus also celebrate Buddha Purnima, and Buddha is like a Hindu god." And I could feel Jesus crying on a moped that day, and I was like, I was like, today I don't have the stamina to deal with this.
Oh, yeah, you have to conserve energy sometimes.
Yes, I just sent like a couple of uh, texts by Baba Sahib, and I was like, Buddha is not a Hindu god.
Mm.
This hijacking is not right. Please.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is Pokhraj Roy who has been hashtagging certain things that you're saying, and I'm noting down the hashtags. One of them is Jesus crying on a moped, and the other
Oh,
one is jibber jabber that the Brahmins do. That's been hashtagged too, and I'm going to use that when I'm going to post this video later on. But yes, please proceed.
I mean, Jesus does cry on a moped like many times, almost every day. I think like like I think every time a Bahujan has to explain things. Like Jesus definitely cries like because I can't picture like Buddha crying on a moped, right? Buddha is like very like peaceful, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, but yeah, I can. Uh, I think I'm more familiar with Christianity, and so I tend to crack jokes like based on
Yeah.
Christianity. But yeah,
And there's this, Pokhraj said something again. He said Buddha is not an avatar of Vishnu. Who started that rumor?
oh yeah,
Oh God,
they're
there's a lot that I have to.
definitely not
But wow,
Buddhists.
there's a lot I have to unlearn. I'm realizing this. Thank you for this conversation, by the way, and all of the people who are actually commenting too. So I have just, I think I can talk to you all day, but then because I need to learn so much too. And hopefully there are people out there who want to learn as well, who make that attempt, or at least, like you mentioned, question certain things, or probably within their circle of influence, starting with their family, ask basic questions, which
Yeah,
if you may be met with some kind of discomfort, but then at least you made someone think. You know, sometimes I feel it's a bit difficult to make our parents' generation or the generation before that unlearn things, but that doesn't mean it should stop. right? Because they are going to
Yeah.
be part of a society for a very long time. And if
Yeah.
there is such a huge population that still thinks in a certain way, then it's a bit difficult to move ahead from there, of course. So before
It
I let
is it
sorry.
is difficult to have those conversations with parents, with grandparents. And I know that, it can have it it can create rifts in your interpersonal relationships with
Tell
them.
me about it. Yeah.
uh, and that can like cause a lot of mental stress. But you must not stop. And I think this is my personal belief that uh, shaming doesn't work, like especially in like interpersonal relationships. Shaming never works. uh, Sometimes you have to put your foot down and give your parents or give your grandparents or your elderly relatives or other relatives uh, time and space to think. What also helps is because not everyone is good at verbal communication. Everyone is not good at having these sort of conversations. But there are certain like nice creative ways of having these conversations. It's your job uh, to not just have those conversations, but also do it in a way that doesn't make them distant from you. So like many times people ask me, how do you expect me to talk to my father, or how do you expect me to talk to my uncle or my grandmother or my mother? She's not going to listen. And but I know that she's very toxic, she's very casteist and all of that. So like every person's relationship is very different and unique with their parents. Like if there are siblings, like each sibling has a very unique relationship with their parent. But as you unlearn, as you learn, relearn, and you read, uh, also figure out like healthy ways of having these conversations, right? Like
So
over board games, over card games, over uh, just if you have access to to memes, or if you have access to Canva or any editing software for that matter, instead of sending good morning messages, like put a quote of Ambedkar in there, in those graphics, put a quote by Phule in there and send that, like, and then write, yeah, whatever, good morning. So there are ways to have these conversations.
it doesn't have to be a debate that gets personal.
Yeah.
Is what you're,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so true, because I think in India, religion and caste is so interwoven in our life that it's it's a way, since it's a way of life, it becomes very difficult for people to then be questioned on it, because in there you're questioning that person's identity, you're questioning that person's existence almost, because that's how interrelated that is in a life of a person from India. It could be very possible. I'm generalizing here. It's not everybody, but I'm generalizing. So it can get difficult.
Another way that I find very effective is that Savarnas can buy artwork from Bahujan artists and gift it to people.
Right, right.
Like frame it nicely and gift it to your friends and loved ones. And, that is it.
One
That
way
will
of starting a
definitely,
conversation or showing support.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's really insightful, and I think I'm going to put these in a post and share it with people as well. Um, Before I let you go, I think we've really extended our time here. It's been almost an hour. It's been an hour. Before I let you go, if there is one thing, and this is usually how I end most of my interviews and most of my conversations. So, Bao, if there is one thing that you would like to change, either within yourself or outside, it could be your immediate environment or your environment at large, what is the one thing that you'd like to change?
There are many, but one would be to be more brave, to not be scared of people, and I don't know, maybe a little less introvert, I think.
Are you? Didn't seem like this in this conversation, which
No, I'm like very introverted, but
yeah.
yeah, and like a lot of change can happen. Yeah, I want to learn to be more articulate and more how do I put it? Like, of course, everyone can't be like super politically correct, but yeah, more patient, I would say, and more yeah, more compassionate.
Yeah. I think you're already on that route because you are brave for having these conversations. I'm sure it's difficult to have these conversations. It's difficult for me to hear, so I can only imagine how difficult it is to express it and to
Yeah.
be surrounded by people who don't always see you, and you sometimes have to assert yourself in a room, and that can be difficult. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for being you. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for having a conversation with me.
Thank you.
There's
Thank
so
you for
much,
inviting me.
of course, and there's so much that I learned today. And I'm sure there's so much that people who have joined have learned today. And I will be posting this video after as well. So for people who have not been able to see it, they can catch you or catch this conversation later on. So thank you so much. And I hope to
Thank
see you
you.
soon, and all the best with your thesis and your course in Germany. Yeah.
Thank you. And
Bye.
let's not make Jesus cry on a moped.
Let's try. Let's try at least. Let's make him laugh.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you.